What if the history books missed something extraordinary? Picture the vast, uncharted oceans of the ancient world, not as barriers, but as highways connecting civilizations we never imagined were linked. Long before the age of Columbus or Magellan, could there have been a global network of seafarers sharing ideas, goods, and stories across continents? The idea might sound like something from a fantasy novel, but the clues are hiding in plain sight. From the ruins of forgotten ports to the eerie similarities between myths on opposite sides of the world, the evidence whispers of a maritime culture so advanced, it reshapes our understanding of human history. Think about the Polynesians navigating the Pacific by the stars, or the Phoenicians, whose ships dominated the Mediterranean. These were not isolated feats. They were part of something bigger. Ancient maps show coastlines they shouldn't have known. Artifacts from one continent turn up thousands of miles away. And then there are the stories, floods, gods, and heroes that echo across cultures separated by oceans. Could these be fragments of a shared past, a time when the sea was not a divider but a connector? The more you look, the harder it becomes to dismiss the possibility that our ancestors were far more interconnected than we ever realized. This isn't just about rewriting history, it's about rediscovering the ingenuity and courage of those who came before us. Imagine setting sail into the unknown with nothing but the wind and the waves as your guide. The risks were unimaginable, and yet they went anyway. What drove them? What did they find? And most importantly, what secrets did they take with them? As we piece together the puzzle of this ancient maritime world, we're not just uncovering lost ships or trade routes, we're uncovering a legacy of exploration that challenges everything we thought we knew. So join us as we dive into the depths of this mystery, where every clue leads to more questions, and every answer opens the door to a past more fascinating than we ever dreamed. What does it truly mean to speak of an ancient global maritime culture? It's more than just scattered voyages or accidental drift. It's the idea of a deliberate, interconnected web of knowledge, where shipbuilders in one corner of the world might have influenced designs thousands of miles away, where star charts and ocean currents were shared like a common language. Imagine a world where a sailor from the Indus Valley could trade stories with a navigator from Peru, where symbols carved into Mediterranean pottery reappear on Pacific islands. This wouldn't just be coincidence, it would suggest a level of organization and communication that rewrites our understanding of ancient ingenuity. Take shipbuilding, for example. The ancient Egyptians used tightly bound reeds to construct vessels capable of open water travel, while on the other side of the world, the people of Lake Titicaca built remarkably similar boats. Could this be parallel innovation or evidence of exchanged ideas? Then there's navigation. The Polynesians read the stars, waves, and even bird flights to cross vast distances, while the Vikings used sunstones to navigate under cloudy skies. These weren't just isolated tricks, they were sophisticated systems that hint at a deeper, possibly shared, understanding of the sea. And what about the artifacts? A Mediterranean-style dagger found in North America, or South American sweet potatoes turning up in Polynesia centuries before Columbus. These aren't just random flukes. They're breadcrumbs leading us toward a startling possibility that the oceans were once bustling highways, not impassable voids. Even myths align. Flood stories, serpent deities, and sunken cities appear in cultures with no known contact. Could these be distant echoes of real events, passed down by sailors who bridged the gaps between worlds? The more we look, the more the pieces fit. This wasn't just about trade or exploration, it was about a collective maritime identity, where knowledge flowed as freely as the tides. The question isn't just whether ancient sailors could cross oceans, but whether they did so often enough to weave a hidden thread through history. And if they did, what else might we have missed? The ancient world's shipbuilders were master engineers, solving problems we'd struggle with even today. Take the reed boats of Mesopotamia, fragile-looking vessels woven from bundles of papyrus, yet capable of navigating not just rivers but open seas. The secret, their design was deceptively brilliant. The reeds were tightly bound to create buoyant, flexible hulls that could ride waves instead of fighting them, a technique still used by the Euros people of Lake Titicaca today. Half a world away, the Egyptians built similar boats, some large enough to carry obelisks weighing hundreds of tons. These weren't crude rafts, they were feats of hydrodynamics honed over generations. Then there's the puzzle of plank-built ships. By the Bronze Age, Mediterranean cultures like the Minoans were constructing vessels with overlapping wooden planks, sealed with pitch and reinforced with mortise and tenon joints, a method so sturdy it remained in use for thousands of years. But here's where it gets strange. Nearly identical techniques appear in ancient Chinese shipyards during the same era, despite no evidence of direct contact. Were these innovations born separately, or could there have been a forgotten exchange of ideas across vast distances? The clues might lie in the wrecks we're still discovering. Off the coast of Turkey, the Uluburun shipwreck, a Bronze Age time capsule, revealed a cargo so diverse it rewrote trade maps. Copper from Cyprus, glass from Mesopotamia, amber from the Baltic. This wasn't just a local trader, it was part of a network spanning continents. Even more telling are the repairs on its hull, showing techniques shared by cultures thousands of miles apart. But perhaps the most startling evidence comes from the Pacific. When European explorers first encountered Polynesian double-hulled canoes, they were stunned by their speed and stability. Some could carry 100 people across thousands of miles of open ocean. Yet recent studies suggest these designs might have roots much older and wider than we thought. Petroglyphs in the Philippines depict similar vessels dating back millennia, while oral histories speak of voyages to lands we're only now rediscovering. So were these shared techniques accidental or something more? When you see the same solutions appearing across unconnected cultures, reinforced hulls, outriggers for stability, navigational methods using stars and currents, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like the fingerprints of a lost maritime dialogue. Maybe the oceans weren't just crossed occasionally by accident, but routinely by design. And if that's true, what other secrets might still be waiting beneath the waves? Navigating the open ocean without modern instruments seems impossible today, yet ancient sailors mastered it with nothing but nature as their guide. The Polynesians didn't just read the stars, they memorized the subtle dance of constellations, knowing exactly how each one shifted with the seasons. But their brilliance didn't stop there. They could detect invisible islands over the horizon by watching how ocean swells bent around unseen land, a skill passed down through chants and stick charts woven from palm fronds. These weren't just maps, they were living records of the sea's secrets, encoded in patterns that modern scientists are only beginning to decipher. Then there's the mystery of the Vikings, who crossed the North Atlantic in brutal conditions. Medieval texts speak of their sunstones, crystals that could pinpoint the sun's location even through thick clouds or fog. For centuries, historians dismissed this as legend until archaeologists found a crystal aboard a 16th-century shipwreck that perfectly matched the descriptions. When tested, it worked. Suddenly, the idea of Vikings reaching North America centuries before Columbus didn't seem so far-fetched. But the most baffling clue might lie in the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze device recovered from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. At first glance, it looked like a lump of metal, but X-rays revealed gears and dials of staggering complexity, an ancient computer capable of predicting eclipses and tracking planetary movements. Who built it, and more importantly, who was using it? The precision suggests this wasn't a one-off experiment but part of a deeper tradition of celestial navigation, possibly shared among seafaring cultures. Even more intriguing are the parallels between navigation methods worlds apart. The Marshall Islanders used stick charts to map currents, while ancient Indian texts describe the Matsya Yantra, a fish-shaped instrument said to guide sailors by the stars. Halfway across the globe, the Chumash people of California navigated by the tides and marine life, much like Polynesian wayfinders. Could these similarities be coincidence or fragments of a lost global knowledge? The evidence points to something extraordinary, a time when the ocean wasn't a barrier but a classroom. Every wave, every bird's flight path, every shift in the wind carried meaning. If these techniques were indeed shared across continents, it rewrites not just the history of exploration, but of human connection itself. What else might these ancient navigators have known, and how much of their wisdom still lies buried, waiting to be rediscovered? Stories of great floods echo across cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, not as minor variations, but as strikingly identical narratives. The Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh speaks of a hero warned by a god to build a boat before a world-ending deluge, saving humanity and animals alike. An almost identical tale appears in the Hindu text of Manu, where a fish guides him to construct an ark before the waters rise. Even Plato's account of Atlantis, a civilization swallowed by the sea, mirrors these themes. But here's what's fascinating: these aren't just isolated legends. From the Aboriginal Dreamtime to the Mayas' Popol Vuh, cultures with no known contact share eerily similar stories of watery cataclysms and lost lands. Could these be more than myths? Some researchers argue their cultural fossils preserved memories of real events that shaped humanity's early history. Imagine a time when rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age submerged vast coastal regions, forcing seafaring societies to scatter and adapt. The flooding of the Black Sea around 5,600 years ago, or the inundation of Sunderland in Southeast Asia, match the timeline of many flood legends. These weren't just local disasters, they were global upheavals that would have been witnessed and remembered by maritime cultures across the world. Then there's the curious case of serpent deities and sea gods. The Mesopotamian Tiamat, a primordial dragon of the ocean, finds her echo in the Chinese dragon Long, the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, and even the Celtic stories of the Loch Ness. These beings often symbolize chaos, creation, and the untamable power of water, a shared reverence among cultures that relied on the sea for survival. Could these myths have traveled along ancient trade routes, carried by sailors swapping stories in distant ports, or do they point to something deeper, a collective memory of a time when the ocean was both giver and destroyer? The most tantalizing clues come from legends of sunken cities. Beyond Atlantis, the Welsh speak of Cantre'r Gwaelod, a kingdom lost to the waves, while Indian texts describe the golden city of Dwarka, said to have drowned beneath the Arabian Sea. In 2008, archaeologists discovered structures off India's coast that match descriptions of Dwarka, submerged walls and artifacts dating back over 3,500 years. Coincidence or proof that these stories hold kernels of truth? What if these myths aren't just folklore, but a fragmented atlas of humanity's maritime past? A time when sailors from different shores shared not just goods, but stories of the sea's wrath and bounty. The flood myths, the serpent gods, the drowned kingdoms, they might be the last whispers of a connected world, one where the ocean wasn't a barrier but a bridge. And if that's true, what other forgotten chapters of our history still lie hidden beneath the waves? Beneath the waves, the remnants of lost civilizations whisper secrets that challenge our historical timelines. Off the coast of Gujarat, India, the submerged ruins of Dwarka, described in ancient Sanskrit texts as Krishna's legendary city, lie scattered across the seabed. Marine archaeologists have uncovered stone anchors, pottery, and structures dating back over 3,500 years, matching descriptions from the Mahabharata. But here's what's astonishing: these aren't isolated findings. Halfway across the world, near Japan's Yonaguni Island, massive step terraces and geometric formations plunge 60 feet underwater. Some argue these are natural formations sculpted by currents, while others point to tool marks and right angles too precise to dismiss. Could these sites be the drowned footprints of a maritime world we've barely begun to understand? Then there's the Mediterranean, where the Uluburun shipwreck rewrote history books. Discovered off the coast of Turkey, this 3,000-year-old vessel carried a cargo so diverse it reads like an ancient manifest of globalization. Copper ingots from Cyprus, African ebony, Baltic amber, Egyptian gold, and even a scarab inscribed with the name of Nefertiti. This wasn't just a trader's haul, it was a floating snapshot of interconnected civilizations. Even more telling are the personal items found aboard: a merchant's wooden writing tablet, Canaanite jewelry, and Mycenaean swords. These artifacts suggest a crew as multicultural as their cargo, hinting at a world where sailors, traders, and artisans moved freely across vast distances. But the real game changer lies in the details. Analysis of the Uluburun's timbers revealed repairs made with wood from distant regions, proving these ships weren't just coastal hoppers, they were ocean-going vessels built for endurance. Similarly, in the Baltic, divers have found sunken landscapes with preserved fishing weirs and tools, suggesting entire communities lived along now submerged shores. From the drowned cities of the Persian Gulf to the mysterious circular harbor of Cambodia's ancient Funan Empire, the pattern is unmistakable. Coastlines once teemed with ports and settlements that vanished beneath rising seas. What ties these discoveries together isn't just their age, but their sophistication. The harbor at Lothal, part of the ancient Indus Valley civilization, featured a tidal dockyard with lock gates to control water levels, an engineering feat unmatched for millennia. Meanwhile, in Greece, the sunken city of Pavloptri, dating back 5,000 years, boasts planned streets and buildings, proving urban maritime cultures flourished earlier than we imagined. These weren't accidental settlements, they were hubs of a thriving maritime network, built by people who understood the sea's rhythms intimately. The implications are staggering. If these sites represent a fraction of what's hidden underwater, how many more Dwarkas and Pavloptris lie undiscovered? Each ruin, each artifact, is a puzzle piece in a global mosaic, one that suggests our ancestors were not just connected, but dependent on the sea as the lifeblood of their civilizations. And if that's true, the story of human history may need more than just an update. It might need a complete rewrite. Trade routes weren't just about moving goods, they were the veins through which ideas, stories, and entire cultures flowed. Take the humble peppercorn, a spice so valuable in ancient Rome that it was worth its weight in gold. But here's the mystery: black pepper grew only in India's Malabar coast, yet it turned up in Egyptian mummies from 1,200 years before the Common Era. How? The answer might lie in the monsoon winds, which ancient sailors learned to harness like a seasonal highway. From the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, merchants timed voyages to catch these predictable gusts, riding them to distant ports and back within a year. This wasn't just luck, it was a system honed over centuries that connected continents with precision. But spices were just the beginning. In a Bronze Age shipwreck off the coast of Turkey, archaeologists found tin from Afghanistan, ivory from Africa, and glass beads from Mesopotamia, all on a single vessel. This wasn't a haphazard collection. It was a carefully curated cargo, proof of a trade network spanning thousands of miles. Even more telling are the Uluburan's copper ingots, standardized in shape and weight across the Mediterranean, suggesting an ancient equivalent of a global trade agreement. Imagine the conversations in those ports, sailors haggling not just over prices but over techniques, star charts, and the latest innovations in shipbuilding. Then there's the enigma of the Silk Road's maritime twin. Long before camel caravans crossed Central Asia, ships were moving silks from China to Egypt. A fragment of Han Dynasty silk turned up in a 2,000-year-old grave in Vienna, while Roman glassware surfaced in a Vietnamese tomb. These weren't one-off accidents. The same winds that carried pepper to Rome could have propelled Chinese junks to India, where their cargo transferred to Arab dhows bound for the Red Sea. A relay race of cultures passing the baton across the waves. Perhaps the most startling evidence comes from the Americas. In a Hopi village in Arizona, archaeologists uncovered a macaw feather headdress, a bird native to Central America dating back to the 9th century. Nearby, shells from the Pacific coast and copper from the Great Lakes region tell the same story. Trade routes crisscrossed the continent long before Europeans arrived. But it's the discovery of Mediterranean-style pottery in Brazil that really turns heads. Could Phoenician ships, masters of the ancient seas, have ventured far beyond the Pillars of Hercules? Or did local cultures develop similar techniques independently? The line between coincidence and connection grows thinner with every find. What emerges from these fragments isn't just a map of trade, but a blueprint of cultural fusion. The same symbols appear on Mesopotamian cylinder seals and Indus Valley pottery. Musical instruments from Egypt resemble those found in Mesopotamia and the Aegean. Even myths travel. The story of a great flood appears in cultures from the Amazon to the Nile. These parallels suggest something profound, that the ancient world wasn't a collection of isolated bubbles, but a shimmering web of exchange where every ship carried more than cargo. They carried the seeds of civilizations scattered like stars across the water. Language is more than just words, it's a living archive of human connection. When we trace the roots of nautical terms across distant shores, something remarkable emerges. Take the word for boat. In ancient Egyptian, it's jat, while across the Pacific, the Polynesian term is vaka. Halfway around the world, the Proto-Indo-European root now echoes in Sanskrit's nova and Latin's navis. These similarities stretch far beyond coincidence, hinting at a time when seafaring cultures exchanged not just goods, but the very language of the sea itself. Even more intriguing are the shared words for celestial navigation. The Polynesian hoku for star aligns curiously with the Maya ek, both referring to celestial guides. Meanwhile, the Proto-Austronesian term banua, meaning land or territory, appears in variations from Madagascar to Easter Island islands separated by thousands of miles of open ocean. Could these linguistic threads be remnants of a time when sailors swapped terms as readily as they traded spices? Critics argue these connections could stem from chants or universal sounds for common objects. But consider this, the word for wave in Basque, alatu, mirrors the Proto-Dravidian ala used by ancient Tamil sailors. Basque isn't even an Indo-European language, making this overlap even more puzzling. Then there's the Proto-Austronesian word for sail, layar, which surfaces in the Malay archipelago and as far west as the Maldives. These aren't isolated quirks, they're breadcrumbs leading back to a shared maritime lexicon. The most compelling evidence lies in specialized terms. Ancient Sanskrit texts describe a navagva and dashagva of vessels capable of surviving 9 or 10 waves, suggesting deep sea travel. Remarkably, similar terms appear in Greek and Phoenician records, describing ships built for open waters. Even more striking are the shared names for constellations used in navigation. The Pleiades, known as Matariki to the Maori, were called Mula in Vedic texts, both marking the start of voyaging seasons. What if language itself was the ultimate cargo? A sailor's word for star or current could have spread as rapidly as the innovations in shipbuilding or navigation. These linguistic echoes don't just hint at random encounters, they suggest sustained contact, where words were woven into the fabric of trade, exploration, and cultural exchange. And if that's true, then every shared term is more than a coincidence. It's a whisper from a time when the sea wasn't a barrier, but a bridge between worlds. The pyramids of Giza don't just point north, they align with uncanny precision to true north, a feat requiring knowledge of the stars so advanced it rivals modern engineering. But here's what's even more astonishing. This celestial precision isn't unique to Egypt. Thousands of miles away, the ancient observatory of Chanquillo in Peru features 13 towers that track the sun's movement with surgical accuracy, marking solstices and equinoxes like a stone calendar. And then there's Stonehenge, where the heel stone frames the summer solstice sunrise in a spectacle that draws crowds to this day. These monuments weren't built in isolation. They're fragments of a global puzzle, hinting at a shared understanding of the heavens that defies coincidence. Consider the star Sirius. In Egypt, its heliacal rising marked the Nile's annual flood, an event so critical it shaped their entire calendar. Yet halfway across the world, the Dogon people of Mali, with no known contact with Egypt, also revered Sirius, claiming their ancestors knew of its invisible companion star centuries before telescopes could confirm it. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Polynesian navigators used the same star to guide voyages across thousands of miles of open ocean. Could these connections be random, or evidence of a maritime network that carried astronomical knowledge as freely as trade goods? The clues grow even more compelling when you examine how these cultures measured time. The Maya's long count calendar, capable of predicting celestial events millennia in advance, shares eerie similarities with Vedic texts from India that describe cosmic cycles with parallel precision. Both systems speak of world ages tied to the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble in Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. Without satellites or telescopes, how did cultures oceans apart arrive at the same calculations? Perhaps the answer lies in the monuments themselves. Newgrange in Ireland, a passage tomb older than the pyramids, captures the winter solstice sunrise in a beam of light that illuminates its inner chamber for exactly 17 minutes. On the other side of the globe, Cambodia's Angkor Wat is aligned so precisely that during the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over its central tower. These aren't just architectural flourishes, they're celestial mirrors, reflecting a universal language written in stone and sunlight. What if these alignments are more than just local achievements? What if they're waypoints in a global tradition where sailors didn't just navigate by the stars, but mapped them into the very bones of their civilizations? From the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica to the star-gazing platforms of ancient China, the patterns suggest a dialogue across oceans, a conversation in constellations that we're only beginning to decode. The stars, it seems, were the first global language, and the sea, its messenger. The notion that ancient sailors might have crossed entire oceans before Columbus seems almost heretical to traditional history until you examine the evidence stacking up across continents. In the jungles of Brazil, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't exist: a cache of Roman coins dating to the reign of Emperor Augustus, buried beneath layers of soil that predate European contact by over 1,000 years. How did they get there? Similarly, sweet potatoes, a crop native to South America, were found in Polynesian soil centuries before Columbus set sail, while African cotton jeans surfaced in pre-Columbian Peruvian textiles. These aren't isolated anomalies, they're pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, suggest a world far more connected than our textbooks admit. Take the case of the Olmec colossal heads in Mexico, carved from basalt with features so distinctly African that scholars have debated their origins for decades. Nearby, researchers found traces of nicotine and cocaine in Egyptian mummies, substances that, at the time, grew only in the Americas, the conventional explanation. Contamination, but when the same substances appear in multiple mummies from different dynasties, the coincidence becomes harder to dismiss. Then there's the Bat Creek stone, discovered in Tennessee, inscribed with characters eerily similar to ancient Hebrew. Mainstream archaeology labels it a hoax, but the script's linguistic nuances match a style used in the Middle East around 2,000 years ago, long before European settlers arrived. The Pacific holds its own mysteries. When Spanish explorers reached the Philippines in the 16th century, they found tribes using advanced metallurgy techniques identical to those in South America, including a unique method of gold alloying previously thought to exist only in the Andes. Even more perplexing are the similarities between Maori and Quechua words for boat construction, or the identical fishhook designs used by ancient Californian and Japanese coastal communities separated by an ocean. Could these be the remnants of a forgotten exchange, or simply parallel innovations born from similar needs? Perhaps the most compelling argument lies in the ships themselves. The Phoenicians, renowned as the Mediterranean's greatest sailors, built vessels capable of carrying 50 tons of cargo across open water. Their secret: watertight hulls sealed with bitumen, a technique also used by the ancient maritime cultures of Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, the Chumash people of California constructed plank canoes strikingly similar to Polynesian designs, despite having no known contact. When you line up these threads, the artifacts, the shared technologies, the linguistic echoes, it paints a picture not of isolated accidents, but of deliberate, sustained contact. The implications are staggering. If ancient mariners could cross the Atlantic or Pacific, even occasionally, it means our understanding of cultural diffusion is fundamentally flawed. Ideas, crops, and technologies might have spread not just over land along the Silk Road, but across the waves carried by sailors whose names we'll never know. And if that's true, then history isn't a series of separate civilizations rising and falling. It's a tapestry woven with threads that stretch across oceans, waiting to be untangled. The Phoenicians didn't just dominate the Mediterranean, they rewrote the rules of ancient exploration. Their ships, sleek and sturdy, ventured beyond the Pillars of Hercules into the storm-lashed Atlantic, reaching as far as Britain for tin and West Africa for gold. But what if these legendary voyages were just the tail end of a much older tradition? The ruins of their coastal cities, like Tyre and Sidon, reveal something peculiar. Their ship designs and navigation techniques appear almost fully formed, as if inherited from an earlier, forgotten seafaring culture. Even their name hints at deeper origins. Phoenician may derive from the Greek word for purple, a nod to their famed dye, but their own texts refer to themselves as the Canaanites, a people with maritime roots stretching back millennia. Take their most daring claim, the possibility they reached the Americas. The controversial Bat Creek stone and Roman-era coins found in Brazil often steal headlines, but the real evidence lies in their ships. Phoenician vessels, with their deep hulls and reinforced keels, were capable of surviving transatlantic crossings, a fact proven when modern replicas like the Phoenicia successfully sailed from Tunisia to the Caribbean using only ancient techniques. Even their trade goods tell a story. North African peanuts and tobacco residue found in Egyptian mummies mirror New World crops, while the similarity between Phoenician and Mesoamerican stepped pyramids raises eyebrows. Were these parallels accidental or remnants of a connection lost to time? Then there's the mystery of their disappearance. By the 4th century before the Common Era, the Phoenicians' influence waned, their cities absorbed by empires. But their legacy didn't vanish, it seeped into the DNA of other cultures. The Carthaginians, their descendants, continued their maritime traditions, while Greek and Roman navies adopted their shipbuilding methods. Even the Vikings may have inherited navigation tricks from Phoenician traders who ventured north. The real question isn't just where they sailed, but what they knew. Their star charts, now lost, were said to rival those of the Polynesians, and their knack for celestial navigation suggests a sophistication we're only beginning to grasp. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in their alphabet, the Phoenician script, ancestor to nearly every modern writing system, spread across the ancient world like wildfire. But here's the twist. Similar symbols appear in petroglyphs from the Canary Islands to coastal North America. Could their greatest export have been their written language, carried by ships to distant shores? Or were they merely the last custodians of a maritime legacy far older than history records? The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes the Phoenicians weren't just master sailors. They might have been the final chapter in a global story we're only now piecing together. Polynesian voyagers didn't just cross the Pacific, they mastered it. Imagine setting out in a double-hulled canoe, no compass or map, just the stars above and the ocean's subtle whispers guiding you to islands unseen. These weren't short hops between nearby shores. They were deliberate, 1,000-mile voyages into the unknown with families, crops, and even livestock aboard. Polynesians didn't stumble upon places like Hawaii or Rapa Nui by accident. They went looking for them, armed with knowledge so precise it feels almost supernatural. Their secret, a navigation system woven into chants, stick charts, and the very fabric of their culture. They memorized the paths of over 200 stars, knowing exactly which ones would rise or set over specific islands. But stars were just the beginning. They read ocean swells like road signs, detecting distant land by how waves refracted around unseen shores. They tracked the flight patterns of birds certain species never strayed more than 40 miles from land, and watched for clouds that hovered stubbornly over islands, betraying their presence long before the horizon did. This wasn't just wayfinding, it was a dialogue with nature, a language of the sea passed down through generations. What's even more astonishing is how far back this tradition stretches. Oral histories speak of Hawaii, a mythical homeland beyond the waves, possibly rooted in real migrations from Southeast Asia thousands of years ago. Then there's the legend of Hui Tirangara, a navigator said to have reached the icy waters near Antarctica in the 7th century, long before Europeans dreamed of such feats. These stories aren't just folklore, they're encrypted logs of voyages we're only now beginning to verify, and the clues aren't just in words. Genetic studies reveal sweet potatoes, a crop native to the Americas growing in Polynesia centuries before Columbus. How did they get there? Did Polynesian canoes reach South America and return, or was there a meeting point, a mid-ocean handoff of ideas and goods? The same question hangs over the chicken bones found in Chile, genetically linked to Polynesian fowl. These aren't isolated curiosities, they're breadcrumbs on a trail that leads to a startling possibility. The Pacific wasn't a barrier but a bridge. The real mystery isn't whether the Polynesians could cross oceans, we know they did. It's whether their voyages were part of something bigger. Petroglyphs in the Philippines depict ships strikingly similar to Polynesian canoes, while linguistic echoes tie their word for sea to ancient Austronesian roots spanning half the globe. Were they the last inheritors of a maritime network that once connected distant shores, or were they solitary pioneers, their achievements standing apart from the wider world? Every new discovery pulls us deeper into the enigma. When a replica of a traditional Polynesian canoe, the Hokulea, sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976 using only ancient methods, it proved something profound. The stories weren't exaggerations. They were manuals, and if these techniques could survive centuries of oral tradition, what else might we have missed? The Polynesians didn't just navigate the ocean, they mapped it in their minds, leaving behind a puzzle we're still piecing together. And with every fragment, the map of human history grows wider, stranger, and more wondrous than we ever imagined. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, shouldn't exist, at least not as we know it. This centuries-old chart, discovered in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, shows coastlines with impossible precision, including parts of South America and, most controversially, Antarctica's northern edge, but with one chilling detail: the land is depicted ice-free. Antarctica hasn't been without ice for millions of years, long before human civilization began. So how could a 16th century cartographer have known its true shape beneath the glaciers? The map's own inscriptions offer a clue. Piri Reis credited his work to older sources, including charts from the time of Alexander the Great and the Four Corners of the World. Was he copying fragments of a far more ancient maritime tradition, one that mapped the planet with startling accuracy? Then there's the Orontius Phineus map, created in 1531, which not only shows Antarctica in startling detail, but positions it correctly relative to other continents, something European explorers wouldn't confirm for another 300 years. Even stranger, its mountain ranges and rivers align with modern subglacial surveys. These aren't rough sketches, they're technical achievements that defy the era's known exploration. And they're not alone. The Zeno map of the 14th century depicts Greenland without its ice cap, while the Haji Ahmed map from 1559 shows a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska, a feature submerged since the last ice age. The common thread: these maps claim to be copies of far older originals, passed down through libraries like Alexandria or whispered between sailors. Some scholars argue they're evidence of a prehistoric civilization with advanced seafaring technology, one that circumnavigated the globe when sea levels were lower and continents looked different. Others suggest they're mosaics of scattered Voyages accounts, pieced together over millennia. But the most compelling detail is what they share: an uncanny knowledge of longitude, a skill Europeans wouldn't master until the 18th century with precise clocks. How did ancient mapmakers calculate east-west distances so accurately without them? Perhaps the answer lies not in the maps themselves, but in what's missing. The Buach map, allegedly based on Phoenician sources, shows an Antarctica split by inland seas, a feature confirmed by modern radar scans. Yet it also includes landmasses that don't exist today, like a vast archipelago in the South Pacific. Could these be memories of now submerged lands, preserved in the charts of cultures that sailed when the world's coastlines were unrecognizable? From the portlands of medieval Europe to the Kangnido map of Korea, the anomalies pile up, each a breadcrumb leading back to the same unsettling possibility. that our planet's full geography was once common knowledge, carried across generations by seafarers whose names we'll never know. What's truly staggering is the scale of the mystery. These maps weren't created in isolation, they're fragments of a lost whole, like pages torn from a global atlas. If even a fraction of their accuracy stems from ancient exploration, it rewrites not just the history of cartography, but of human ambition. Who were these sailors? What tools did they use? And how much of their world have we yet to rediscover beneath the waves or hidden in plain sight? The maps don't just challenge our timeline, they hint at a golden age of exploration buried so deep we're only now scratching the surface. The ocean floor hides more secrets than we ever imagined. Entire cities swallowed by rising seas, forgotten ports buried under centuries of sediment, and structures so puzzling they defy easy explanation. Take the Baltic Sea anomaly, a 60-meter-wide formation discovered by sonar in 2011. Its symmetrical lines and stare-like features sparked wild theories, from a sunken UFO to a lost Nazi weapon. But geologists argue it's likely a glacial deposit. Yet the mystery lingers. Why does this one formation disrupt compasses, while the surrounding seabed doesn't? Nearby, divers found ancient stone anchors and tool marks on underwater cliffs, hinting at human activity where no known civilization was supposed to exist. Then there's the Bimini Road, a half-mile stretch of rectangular limestone blocks off the coast of Florida. Some claim it's a remnant of Atlantis, while scientists insist it's natural beach rock. But here's the twist. The stones align with geological formations in Cuba and the Bahamas, suggesting a possible network of submerged sites. Even more intriguing are the megaliths near Japan's Yonaguni Island, terraces, staircases, and what appears to be a carved human face, all 60 feet underwater. Marine geologists debate whether currents sculpted these forms, but the precision of the right angles and parallel walls makes nature an unlikely artist. The real game changer, recent tech like underwater LiDAR and robotic submersibles has uncovered ruins we couldn't even detect a decade ago. Off the coast of India, divers mapped the sunken city of Dwarka with 3D imaging, revealing grid-patterned streets and seawalls that match ancient Sanskrit descriptions. In the Mediterranean, a Greek underwater drone stumbled upon a shipwreck so intact, its amphorae still stood in rows, as if waiting to be unloaded. These aren't just isolated finds, they're snapshots of a time when coastlines stretched farther, and thriving cities now lie beneath the waves. What ties these discoveries together isn't just their age, but their sophistication. The Baltic's potential anchors, YON, a GUNI, S Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Bimini's geometric blocks, they hint at a maritime world far more advanced than we've credited. And with 95% of the ocean still unexplored, how many more Dwarkas are waiting? Every new sonar ping, every robotic dive, brings us closer to a truth that could rewrite history, that the sea wasn't just a barrier to our ancestors, but a highway, and its sunken cities might be the lost landmarks of a global civilization we're only beginning to remember. The Baghdad Battery sits quietly in a museum display, a humble clay jar no bigger than your hand, yet its very existence rattles conventional history. Found in Iraq and dating back 2,000 years, this odd artifact contains a copper cylinder and iron rod that, when filled with vinegar or lemon juice, generates a measurable electric current. Skeptics dismiss it as a ceremonial vessel, but replica experiments prove it could power small devices. Now imagine this technology aboard ancient ships, electroplating tools to resist seawater corrosion, creating light sources for night voyages, or even powering primitive signaling systems between vessels. Suddenly, those impossible transoceanic journeys seem a little more plausible. Then there's the Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off Greece in 1901. This intricate bronze device, with its 37 meshing gears, could predict eclipses and track planetary movements, a level of mechanical sophistication unmatched until Renaissance Europe. But here's the twist: it wasn't a one-off. Recent scans reveal inscriptions suggesting it was mass-produced, hinting at a broader tradition of precision engineering. Picture navigators using such devices to calculate tides, plot courses by celestial events, or even predict monsoon winds with uncanny accuracy. If these tools were standard equipment for ancient mariners, it would rewrite our understanding of their capabilities overnight. The real enigma lies in the gaps between these artifacts. The Phaistos disc from Crete, stamped with undeciphered symbols arranged in a spiral, resembles a portable logbook or star chart. The Dendera light bulb reliefs in Egypt, showing figures beneath what look like giant filaments, spark debates about lost electrical knowledge. Even the Voynich manuscript, with its bizarre botanical illustrations and unreadable script, might encode navigation secrets, its star maps matching no known constellation, as if charting seas beyond our maps. What binds these objects together isn't just their mystery, but their potential synergy. A ship outfitted with the Baghdad battery's power, guided by an Antikythera-like computer, and illuminated by Dendera-style lamps, could have ventured farther and more precisely than we've ever credited. And if such technologies were shared across cultures, traded along maritime routes like spices or silk, it would explain the sudden leaps in shipbuilding and navigation seen worldwide. The missing link might not be a single civilization, but a web of interconnected innovation where breakthroughs spread as swiftly as the tides. The ocean, after all, was the original information superhighway. A sailor repairing his hull in India might share a trick with a Phoenician trader who'd carry it to Carthage, where a Greek navigator would adapt it for Mediterranean waters. Technologies could evolve through this global feedback loop, leaving behind fragments we're only now recognizing as part of a greater whole. The real question isn't whether these artifacts worked in isolation, but how they might have fit into a system, one where knowledge flowed as freely as the currents, and where the sea wasn't a barrier but a conductor of ideas. Climate change isn't just a modern crisis, it's a force that's shaped human history in ways we're only beginning to understand. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age retreated, melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise by nearly 400 feet, swallowing vast stretches of coastline worldwide. Entire civilizations built along fertile shores and bustling ports would have vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind only echoes in myth and memory. The story of Atlantis, first mentioned by Plato, is often dismissed as pure legend, but it's far from alone. From the Aboriginal Dreamtime tales of Australia to the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, cultures separated by oceans share eerily similar stories of catastrophic floods and lost lands. Could these stories be more than just folklore? Could they be fractured recollections of real, advanced societies that thrived along now drowned shores? Consider the case of Doggerland, a vast landmass that once connected Britain to mainland Europe. Today, it lies beneath the North Sea, but archaeological dredging has revealed tools, weapons, and even remnants of hunting camps, proof that this was once a thriving ecosystem, home to thousands. Similarly, off the coast of India, the submerged ruins of Dwarka align perfectly with ancient Sanskrit texts that describe a glorious city swallowed by the sea. These aren't isolated examples. In the Persian Gulf, underwater surveys have uncovered freshwater springs and river channels, hinting at a fertile landscape that could have supported early agricultural communities before rising waters transformed it into the salty depths we know today. The real mystery lies in what we haven't found, or perhaps what we've overlooked. modern coastlines are just the latest snapshot in an ever-changing world. 12,000 years ago, the Sunda Shelf connected Southeast Asia into a single landmass, while the Sahul Shelf joined Australia and New Guinea. These weren't just land bridges, they were heartlands of human activity, now submerged under hundreds of feet of water. If maritime cultures flourished here, their settlements would have been among the first to vanish, leaving behind only the faintest traces. The scarcity of evidence isn't proof they never existed, it's a testament to how thoroughly the sea can erase history. But the most compelling clues might lie in the gaps themselves. Why do we see sudden leaps in agricultural technology, architecture, and seafaring prowess in disparate cultures around the same time? Could these advancements have originated in lost coastal societies, their knowledge carried inland by survivors of the floods? The abrupt appearance of megalithic structures like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built just as sea levels stabilized, raises tantalizing questions. Were these projects the work of refugees, preserving the skills and stories of a drowned world? The flood myths themselves offer a haunting thread. The Maya speak of a great deluge that wiped out an earlier, flawed civilization. The Sumerians wrote of the gods sending waters to cleanse humanity, sparing only Ziusudra and his ark. Even the Bible's Noah shares striking parallels with earlier Mesopotamian accounts. These stories span continents and cultures with no known contact, yet they share a common structure: a warning ignored, a catastrophic flood, and a rebirth of civilization. That consistency is hard to dismiss as mere coincidence. What if these myths are the last whispers of a forgotten chapter, a time when maritime cultures, advanced for their era, dotted the coastlines of a younger world only to be erased by rising tides? Their disappearance would explain the puzzling gaps in our archaeological record, the sudden appearance of sophisticated technologies, and the universal fear of the sea's wrath that lingers in our oldest stories. The ocean doesn't just hide shipwrecks and lost treasure, it may hold the ruins of entire societies, their legacy written not in stone, but in the stories we've carried ashore. Skeptics have a point: human ingenuity often finds similar solutions to common problems. After all, cultures separated by oceans might independently invent the wheel, agriculture, or even pyramids simply because these innovations address universal needs. But maritime technology tells a different story. When two cultures develop not just similar boats, but identical solutions to hyper-specific challenges like using bundled reeds for buoyancy or designing double hulls for stability, it starts to stretch coincidence beyond reason. Take the case of reed boats. The ancient Egyptians and the Uros people of Lake Titicaca both constructed vessels from tightly bound papyrus and totora reeds, respectively. Both cultures shaped them with upturned bows to ride waves rather than cut through them, and both treated the reeds with resin or pitch to prolong their lifespan in water. These aren't just broad similarities, they're granular technical choices. Parallel evolution might explain basic boat shapes, but it struggles to account for such precise overlaps in material, form, and function. Then there's the puzzle of outrigger canoes. Polynesian and Sri Lankan sailors, separated by thousands of miles of open ocean, both stabilized their vessels with lateral floats attached by wooden beams. The physics aren't obvious. Early European shipwrights rarely stumbled upon this design. Yet these cultures not only adopted it, they refined it in near-identical ways, adjusting the outrigger's position to balance speed and stability. Even the lashing techniques mirror each other, with intricate knots that resist unraveling in saltwater. Coincidence, maybe, but when paired with shared myths of flood-surviving ancestors or serpentine sea gods, the odds start to feel improbable. Mythology offers another layer of intrigue. The Babylonian god E, who warned of a catastrophic flood, finds his counterpart in the Aztec deity Tlaloc, who drowned the world to purge humanity's sins. Both are depicted with serpentine motifs, linked to water, and associated with arcane knowledge, eerily specific parallels for cultures supposedly isolated. Even the details align. Flood survivors in both traditions build sealed vessels, preserve animal species, and release birds to find land. These aren't vague resemblances, they're narrative blueprints repeated across continents. The counterargument, of course, is that humans everywhere face similar environmental pressures. Coastal cultures will inevitably deify the sea, fear floods, and innovate ways to traverse water. Yet that doesn't explain the idiosyncrasies, like why the same obscure constellations guide navigators from the Mediterranean to the South Pacific, or why certain knots appear in ship rigging from Norway to Indonesia. Independent invention can account for broad strokes, but not these fingerprints of shared technique. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Maybe sporadic contact, a single ship blown off course, a lone voyage that sparked a cultural exchange, planted seeds that grew independently in different soils. A Phoenician trader might have shared a star chart with a Polynesian navigator, or a storm-stranded sailor demonstrated a knot that spread across trade routes. These micro-encounters could have sparked macro-similarities, leaving behind traces we now mistake for either coincidence or conspiracy. What's undeniable is this: the ocean has always been a conduit, not just a barrier. Whether through sustained contact or fleeting moments of connection, our ancestors' maritime achievements were too synchronized, too nuanced to be purely isolated. The deeper we dive, the clearer it becomes the sea didn't just separate our past, it connected it. The colossal stone temples of Malta, the enigmatic platforms of Peru, and the towering structures of Japan's Yonaguni, what could these sites, separated by oceans and millennia, possibly have in common? At first glance, they seem like isolated marvels, products of cultures that never crossed paths. Yet when you examine the details, a startling pattern emerges. The same precise stone-cutting techniques, the same astronomical alignments, even the same mysterious symbols etched into weathered rock. These aren't just random similarities. They're echoes of something far bigger, hints of a shared architectural language that spanned the globe long before history books say such connections were possible. Take the megalithic temples of Malta, some of the oldest freestanding structures on Earth. Built over 5,000 years ago, their massive limestone blocks fit together so tightly you can't slide a knife between them, a technique eerily similar to the polygonal masonry of Peru's Sacsayhuaman, where stones weighing hundreds of tons interlock like puzzle pieces. Even more baffling, both cultures carved spirals and concentric circles into their stones, symbols that reappear on Japan's submerged monuments and Ireland's Newgrange. These motifs aren't just decorative, they're mathematical, reflecting an advanced understanding of geometry that shouldn't have existed in these supposedly isolated societies. Then there's the matter of alignment. The Mnajdra temple in Malta tracks the equinoxes with pinpoint accuracy, its doorway flooding with sunlight on the first day of spring and autumn. Half a world away, the Incas' Coricancha in Cusco did the same, while Egypt's Great Pyramid marked the solstices with its shadow. Such precision requires more than local observation. It demands a systematic study of the heavens, the kind that usually develops over centuries of shared knowledge. Could these monuments be the work of a single, seafaring culture that mapped the stars and taught others to do the same? Or were they nodes in a vast network of exchanged ideas, where sailors carried not just goods, but blueprints for building in harmony with the cosmos? The most compelling evidence might lie in the stones themselves. In Baalbek, Lebanon, the trilithon consists of 3 blocks weighing 800 tons, each hauled from a quarry miles away and lifted 20 feet into place. How, no one knows, but across the Atlantic, Ollantaytambo in Peru features similarly massive stones, perfectly fitted without mortar. Both sites use identical methods to cushion the stones against earthquakes, tapered grooves that allow the blocks to shift slightly during tremors, then settle back into place. That's not just clever engineering, it's the same solution, appearing continents apart. Perhaps the most haunting connection lies underwater. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni monuments' terraces and staircases mirror the step pyramids of Mesopotamia and Mesoamerica. Skeptics call it a natural formation, but the right angles and parallel walls defy geology. Even more telling are the carvings' bull's eye symbols identical to those in Malta and the Indus Valley. These aren't just artistic flukes, they're signatures left by builders who either shared a culture or learned from the same source. So who were these architects? The conventional answer is that great minds think alike, that separated cultures independently arrived at similar solutions. But when the similarities extend to niche details, specific mortar mixtures, astronomical alignments down to the minute, even the same symbolic vocabulary, it strains belief. The alternative, a lost maritime network where master builders sailed from port to port, sharing techniques that shaped the ancient world. Whether they were teachers, traders, or something more, their legacy endures in stone, waiting for us to decode its true meaning. The megaliths don't just stand as testaments to human ingenuity. They might be the first chapters in a global story we're only beginning to read. Ancient seafaring myths aren't just entertaining stories. They're time capsules preserving the wisdom and fears of generations who lived by the sea's mercy. The Norse sagas speak of Leif Erikson reaching Vinland, a tale long dismissed as legend until archaeologists uncovered Viking settlements in Newfoundland. Sinbad the Sailor's fantastical voyages through rocks and whirlpools mirror actual hazards faced by Arab traders navigating the Indian Ocean's monsoon winds. Even Homer's Odyssey, with its cyclops and sirens, follows real Mediterranean trade routes so accurately that modern scholars have retraced its path. These narratives share something profound. They're not pure fiction, but embellished records of genuine maritime experience, passed down until the line between fact and myth blurred. Consider the Polynesian story of Maui fishing up islands from the deep, a poetic explanation for how their ancestors discovered new lands across the Pacific. The details are mythical, but the core is practical. It encodes wayfinding techniques. When Maui hooks an island by reading cloud formations or bird migrations, he's demonstrating real navigation methods still used by Polynesian voyagers today. Similarly, the Aboriginal tale of the Wawalag sisters fleeing a rising flood may memorialize ancient sea level changes that reshaped Australia's coastline millennia ago. These stories served as both entertainment and education, preserving survival knowledge in memorable packages. But the most tantalizing myths are those that cross cultural boundaries. The Greek hero Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece parallels the Welsh legend of Bran the Blessed sailing to the otherworld. Both involve magical vessels, perilous straits, and encounters with supernatural beings. Halfway across the world, the Maori tell of Cup's voyage to Aotearoa, New Zealand, where he battles a giant octopus in waters still known for squid fisheries. The similarities are too specific to dismiss as coincidence. Distant cultures didn't just share story structures, but the very monsters and milestones of their sea lore. Perhaps these tales are more than just colorful metaphors. When multiple cultures describe crossing waters of death, guarded by serpent deities from the Mesopotamian Tiamat to the Hindu Shesha, Could they be referencing the same treacherous currents or whirlpools? When Viking sagas and Japanese folklore both speak of black ships arriving from beyond the horizon, might they recall encounters with unknown mariners? The ocean has always been humanity's greatest mystery, and in the absence of maps, our ancestors charted it through stories. Every monster was a warning, every paradise island a beacon of hope. These myths were their navigation logs, written not in ink but in imagination, and beneath the fantasy, the bones of truth still show. Genetic evidence is rewriting the map of ancient human movement in ways that defy traditional narratives. Take the sweet potato, a crop native to South America that somehow reached Polynesia centuries before European contact. For decades, this botanical mystery fueled debate, but modern DNA analysis has delivered a stunning verdict. Polynesians carry traces of indigenous South American ancestry. This isn't just a faint whisper of contact, it's a genetic shout, proving that Pacific voyagers not only reached the Americas but returned home with more than just stories. The timeline aligns perfectly with oral traditions, like the Rapa Nui legend of Hotu Matua, whose ancestors supposedly sailed eastward to their island from a distant land. What was once dismissed as myth now stands as scientific fact, but the surprises don't stop there. In the Amazon, researchers sequencing the DNA of the Surui and Karashiana tribes stumbled upon something extraordinary, markers linking them to ancient Australasian populations, a connection with no clear overland route. How did genes from people ancestral to modern Australians and New Guineans end up in the heart of South America? The most plausible explanation, a maritime journey, perhaps along the same currents that later carried Polynesian navigators across the Pacific. These genetic trails are like footprints on a beach, slowly fading but still visible, if you know where to look. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the bones of a child buried in Siberia 24,000 years ago tell another tale. Genetic analysis revealed this individual had both European and Native American ancestry, predating the migration across the Bering Land Bridge by millennia. This discovery shattered the long-held belief that the Americas were isolated until the last ice age. Instead, it paints a picture of a far more dynamic ancient world, where seafaring or coastal migrations now lost to rising seas could have linked continents much earlier than we imagined. Even the Vikings left more than ruins in North America. Studies of Icelandic populations reveal a small but significant percentage of indigenous American DNA, likely introduced by a native woman brought back to Europe around the year 1000. This genetic echo confirms what sagas like the Greenlanders saga hinted at. Transatlantic contact wasn't a one-time accident, but part of a broader pattern of exploration and exchange. The implications are staggering. If genes could cross oceans, so could technologies, ideas, and cultural practices. The same currents that carried Polynesian sailors to South America might have brought back metallurgy techniques or crop varieties, explaining why certain innovations appear suddenly in the archaeological record. These genetic clues are more than just biological data, they're fragments of a lost history, one where the oceans were highways, not barriers. And with every new genome sequenced, the map of our ancient world grows more interconnected, more surprising, and far more fascinating than textbooks ever allowed. The ocean doesn't move randomly. It breathes in predictable rhythms, and ancient sailors learned to read its pulse like a language. From the Celts who charted the treacherous whirlpools of the Coromandel to Chinese scholars documenting tidal patterns as early as 2,000 years ago, cultures separated by vast distances shared an uncanny grasp of the sea's hidden clockwork. The Romans even left behind tide mills along the Spanish coast, their gears timed to the moon's pull with precision that rivals modern engineering. But here's what's truly staggering. These weren't isolated observations. The same tidal knowledge appears in Polynesian chants, Viking sagas, and Aboriginal songlines, almost as if someone had handed them the same instruction manual. Take the case of the Severn Bore, a tidal wave that surges up England's River Severn with such force it's surfable for miles. Celtic legends speak of a goddess controlling the phenomenon, but their oral traditions also encode exact timings for safe passage, details confirmed by modern hydrographers. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Maori spoke of Te Tai o Rehua, a tidal current so consistent it served as a maritime highway between islands. Both cultures personified the tides as deities, yet beneath the mythology lay razor-sharp empirical data. The real enigma lies in the tools they used. The Chinese invented the tidal pearl, a device that predicted tides using mercury-filled chambers responsive to lunar phases. Norse sagas describe moonstones that track tidal cycles, possibly similar to the sunstones used for navigation. Even more intriguing are the Marshall Islands stick charts, not maps of land, but 3D representations of ocean swells and currents, woven from palm fibers. These weren't just aids, they were textbooks of hydrodynamics, passed down through generations without a single written word. What ties these fragments together is their eerie consistency. The ancient Welsh knew the Atlantic's currents could carry a boat from their shores to North America in 40 days, a fact later confirmed by drift bottle experiments. Phoenician traders timed their Mediterranean voyages to coincide with subsurface currents invisible to the naked eye, and in the Pacific, Polynesian navigators could detect distant islands by reading how tides bent around unseen landmasses, a skill modern scientists only verified with satellite imaging. This level of coordination suggests more than isolated genius. It points to a shared maritime science where knowledge of tides and currents flowed as freely as the oceans themselves. Whether through trade routes, shipwrecked travelers, or deliberate exploration, the data circulated not as guarded secrets, but as communal survival tools. The sea was their classroom, and its lessons were too vital to keep to oneself. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in what's missing. No ancient culture with coastal ties lacked tidal knowledge, yet none claimed to have invented it. The Greeks credited Poseidon, the Japanese the dragon Ryujin, the Maya the god Chok, all acknowledging this wisdom as something received, not created. In a world where the ocean was both livelihood and grave, understanding its rhythms wasn't just science, it was sacred, and that reverence might be why, even today, we're still deciphering the full depth of what they knew. The sea was more than just a source of food or a path for trade. It was a sacred force, worshipped in temples and feared in storms. From the storm-ruling tantrums of Poseidon to the serpentine majesty of the Mesoamerican Kukulkan, ancient civilizations personified the ocean's power through strikingly similar deities. But what's truly fascinating isn't just the gods themselves, it's the rituals that surrounded them. Take the Phoenician practice of sacrificing horses to the sea before long voyages, or the Norse tradition of burying chieftains in ships to navigate the afterlife. Half a world away, the Moch of Peru cast gold figurines into the Pacific to appease their own sea god, Nai. These weren't isolated superstitions. They were precise, almost formulaic ceremonies, echoing across cultures with no known contact. Consider the storm-calming rituals. Babylonian texts describe sailors anointing their ships with cedar oil and reciting incantations to appease the chaos dragon Tiamat, while Polynesian navigators whispered chants to Lono, god of winds, as they scattered offerings of kava root into the waves. The parallels run deeper than mere desperation. They share a structural rhythm, as if following an ancient maritime playbook. Even the tools of these rituals mirror one another. conch shells blown to summon deities in the Caribbean, and the Mediterranean, sacred nets cast into the water by Japanese Shinto priests and Celtic druids alike. When you line up these practices, the overlaps feel less like coincidence and more like fragments of a shared spiritual lexicon. Then there's the mystery of sacred navigation. The ancient Egyptians buried their dead with sky clocks, star maps to guide souls across celestial seas, while Viking burials included carved wooden moon boards to navigate the afterlife's waters. Both cultures, separated by millennia and geography, envisioned death as a voyage, complete with the same symbolic tools their sailors used in life. Even the Dogon of Mali, who revered the star Sirius as the home of amphibious ancestors, built their villages in the shape of boats, as if perpetually ready for a cosmic journey. These weren't just poetic metaphors, they were reflections of a worldview where land and sea, life and death, were part of the same endless current. The most tantalizing clues lie in the artifacts. In Crete, archaeologists uncovered a shrine filled with model ships, their prows shaped like crescent moons, a design mirrored in votive offerings from ancient Indonesia. In India, the lost city of Dwarka's underwater ruins revealed stone anchors stacked like offerings near a submerged temple. Were these devotional acts local inventions or echoes of a universal maritime faith? The answer might lie in the unlikeliest of places. Children's toys, miniature boats often inscribed with prayers, have been found in coastal graves from Scandinavia to Okinawa. Whether placed to protect the dead or guide the living, their ubiquity suggests a shared belief in the sea as both giver and taker, a force to be honored by every generation. Perhaps these rituals weren't just about survival, but continuity. When a Polynesian navigator traced his lineage back to the god Maui, or a Greek sailor claimed descent from Poseidon, they weren't just boasting. They were anchoring themselves to a lineage of seafarers stretching back into the fog of time. The sea wasn't just a workplace, it was a temple without walls, where every wave carried the whispers of ancestors and every storm was a test of faith. And if these spiritual practices did stem from a common source, it wouldn't just reshape our understanding of ancient religion. It would reveal a world where the ocean wasn't just a divider of lands, but a bridge between souls. History isn't just written by the winners, it's written by those with the loudest voices and the firmest grip on tradition. The idea that ancient civilizations might have been far more interconnected than we've been taught doesn't just ruffle feathers in academia, it upends entire frameworks of how we understand human progress. For decades, theories of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact or a lost maritime network have been met with skepticism, even ridicule. But why? At its core, the resistance isn't just about evidence, it's about the stories we've decided to believe. Mainstream archaeology often operates like a courtroom, demanding smoking gun proof before considering alternative narratives. A single Roman coin in Brazil. Contamination, similar ship designs on opposite sides of the globe, parallel evolution. The insistence on written records or unambiguous artifacts as the only valid evidence ignores a fundamental truth: the sea swallows its secrets. Wooden ships rot, ports sink beneath rising waters, and oral traditions fade. What survives is often fragmentary, like trying to reconstruct a library from a handful of scattered pages. But the tide is turning. Take the case of Norse settlements in North America. For years, the Viking sagas describing Vinland were dismissed as legend until archaeologists unearthed definitive proof at Elance Orks Meadows in the 1960s. Similarly, the once fringe idea that Polynesians reached South America is now backed by genetic studies and crop evidence. These breakthroughs didn't come from within the academic establishment. They emerged despite it, fueled by outsiders willing to ask uncomfortable questions. The real friction lies in what these discoveries imply. If ancient sailors could cross oceans, it means our tidy timelines of cultural development, where innovations like metallurgy or agriculture spread slowly over land, are incomplete at best. It suggests that ideas, technologies, and even people moved in ways we're only beginning to grasp. For institutions built on decades of carefully curated research, that's destabilizing. Admitting that history is messier than our textbooks means rethinking everything from museum exhibits to national origin stories. Yet the most vocal critics often overlook their own biases. The same scholars who dismiss Polynesian navigation feats as exaggerated celebrate Columbus for discovering a continent already inhabited by millions. The double standard is revealing. We're quick to credit European explorers with ambition and skill, but reluctant to extend that recognition to non-Western cultures. It's as if the idea that ancient peoples might have been just as capable, if not more so, threatens the very foundations of how we measure human achievement. What's at stake isn't just academic pride. If we acknowledge that our ancestors were more connected, it reshapes our understanding of human ingenuity. Maybe the pyramids, the megaliths, and the star charts weren't isolated triumphs, but nodes in a global network of shared knowledge. Perhaps the Dark Ages weren't dark at all, just periods where the records were lost to time or still lie hidden beneath the waves. The irony is that science at its best should welcome challenges to orthodoxy. Every major breakthrough in history, from plate tectonics to germ theory, faced fierce resistance before being accepted. The real question isn't whether we have enough evidence of ancient maritime cultures. It's whether we're willing to let go of the narratives we've clung to for so long and sail into uncharted historical waters with open minds. After all, if history teaches us anything, it's that the truth is rarely as simple as the stories we tell about it. What if the solutions to some of our modern crises, climate change, cultural divides, even the loss of ancient knowledge, were hiding in the forgotten wisdom of these maritime pioneers? Imagine a civilization that thrived not by conquering the sea, but by harmonizing with it. Their survival depended on reading ocean currents like road maps, predicting weather shifts from subtle changes in bird behavior, and passing down navigational chants with the precision of scientific formulas. In a world grappling with environmental collapse, their deep ecological intuition feels less like history and more like a blueprint we desperately need. Take sustainability. The Polynesians practiced ahupua, a land management system that divided islands into vertical strips from mountain to reef, ensuring each community had access to fresh water, fertile soil, and fishing grounds, all while preventing overexploitation. Similarly, the ancient Minoans of Crete built palaces with advanced drainage systems and terraced farms that minimized soil erosion. These weren't just clever tricks, they were holistic philosophies, recognizing that survival meant working with nature's rhythms rather than against them. In an era of strip-mined oceans and vanishing forests, their models whisper alternatives we've barely considered. Then there's the art of cultural exchange. The ulubur shipwrecks cargo ebony from Africa, tin from Afghanistan, Baltic amber wasn't just a collection of luxury goods. It was proof of a world where trade meant more than profit. It was a dialogue. Artifacts like the Nebra sky disk, blending symbols from multiple Bronze Age cultures, suggest that these networks didn't just move goods, they fused ideas, creating hybrid technologies and shared mythologies. Today, as globalization strains under nationalism and supply chain crises, their example offers a radical thought. Interconnection doesn't have to mean exploitation. It can mean mutual reinvention, but perhaps the most urgent lesson lies in their resilience. When rising seas swallowed Doggerland or droughts collapsed the Bronze Age trade networks, these cultures didn't just vanish, they adapted. The Phoenicians shifted from coastal hubs to open water voyages. The Polynesians developed double-hulled canoes to cross greater distances. Their flexibility wasn't just practical, it was cultural, embedded in stories that celebrated exploration over stasis. In the face of our own climate upheavals, that mindset, seeing change as a catalyst rather than a catastrophe, could be their greatest legacy. Rediscovering their legacy isn't just about rewriting history books. It's about reclaiming a lost toolkit for thriving on a turbulent planet. From tidal energy systems inspired by ancient mills to microgrids modeled on Polynesian sustainability, their innovations are finding new life in labs and startups. Even their star charts, once dismissed as myth, are guiding modern sailors, reviving traditional navigation to reduce reliance on vulnerable GPS systems. The past isn't just prologue here, it's a partner, offering solutions we're only beginning to recognize. The real question isn't whether these maritime cultures existed. It's whether we're brave enough to learn from them. In their stories, we glimpse a world where borders were fluid, knowledge was communal, and survival meant listening to the wind and waves. As we stand on our own precipice of climate crisis, of technological overreach, of cultural fragmentation, their choices echo across millennia. They didn't just sail into the unknown, they carried the best of humanity with them. And that, more than any artifact, might be the treasure we've been searching for all along. The ocean floor remains one of the last great frontiers of exploration, and with each passing year, new technologies peel back another layer of its mysteries. Underwater drones equipped with high-resolution sonar now scan the seabed with precision once unimaginable, revealing sunken cities and shipwrecks hidden for millennia. Satellite imaging detects subtle variations in water color and temperature, pinpointing potential archaeological sites beneath the waves. Even DNA analysis of ancient sediments can now trace the movements of long-vanished cultures through microscopic organisms left in their wake. We're not just searching for clues, we're rebuilding an entire lost world, piece by piece. Take the recent discovery of a potential megalithic structure off the coast of Sicily. Its massive stones arranged in a pattern that echoes Malta's ancient temples. Or the underwater drone footage from the Baltic Sea, capturing what appears to be a ceremonial stone circle resting on the seabed, a site that, if confirmed, would rewrite the timeline of Northern European seafaring. These aren't isolated finds, they're part of a growing pattern, one that suggests the coasts of our ancestors were far more crowded and interconnected than we ever dared imagine. But the real breakthroughs may lie in the gaps between these discoveries. Advanced computer modeling now allows researchers to simulate ancient sea levels and currents, revealing forgotten migration routes and trade pathways. A team in Australia recently used this tech to reconstruct the likely voyage that brought sweet potatoes from South America to Polynesia, tracing a route that aligns perfectly with oral traditions passed down for generations. Meanwhile, linguists are employing AI to decode shared nautical terms across distant languages, uncovering linguistic bridges that span oceans. The most tantalizing possibilities, however, come from projects still in progress. Off the coast of India, marine archaeologists are mapping what could be the remains of Kumari Kandam, a legendary sunken continent described in Tamil texts. In the Caribbean, sonar surveys have identified geometric formations resembling submerged road structures that, if man-made, would predate known Caribbean civilizations by thousands of years. Even space agencies are joining the hunt, with NASA lending satellite tech to scan for underwater ruins in the Persian Gulf, where rising seas may have swallowed early human settlements at the end of the last ice age. What makes this moment so extraordinary isn't just the tools at our disposal, but the shift in perspective they're driving. For centuries, history was written from the land outward, treating the sea as an afterthought. Now, we're beginning to see the oceans as our ancestors did, not as barriers, but as the connective tissue of civilization. Every new discovery chips away at the old narrative, revealing a past where sailors, not shepherds, might have been the true architects of human progress. The most exciting part: we've barely scratched the surface. Less than 5% of the ocean floor has been explored with modern technology, leaving vast stretches untouched. Who knows what's waiting in those uncharted depths? Another Antikythera mechanism, a sunken library, or even the ruins of a port city that once linked continents. The search for an ancient global maritime culture isn't winding down. It's accelerating, fueled by curiosity, cutting-edge science, and the growing realization that the waves hold stories far older and more extraordinary than we've ever dreamed. The evidence for an ancient global maritime culture isn't just compelling. It's a puzzle with pieces scattered across every ocean. From the Polynesian voyagers who crossed thousands of miles of open water to the Phoenician traders whose ships may have reached the Americas, the fragments we've uncovered suggest a world humming with connections long before modern maps existed. Think about it: identical shipbuilding techniques appearing continents apart, shared flood myths echoing across isolated cultures, artifacts turning up where they simply shouldn't be. These aren't just curious coincidences, they're breadcrumbs leading us toward a radical rethinking of human history. Yet for all we've discovered, the full picture remains tantalizingly out of reach. The Ulubur on shipwrecks multicultural cargo hints at a Bronze Age trade network spanning from the Baltic to the Nile, while the Yonaguni monument's submerged steps dare us to question what else might lie beneath the waves. Even the stars tell a story. Constellations used for navigation in one culture mirror those in another, as if celestial knowledge once flowed as freely as the tides. The challenge isn't finding evidence, it's piecing together a narrative from clues weathered by time, tides, and skepticism. What's thrilling is how much we still stand to learn. Every year, new technologies from underwater LiDAR to sediment DNA analysis pull back another layer of the ocean's secrets. Marine archaeologists now explore depths once considered unreachable, while linguists decode shared nautical terms buried in ancient dialects. Even geneticists are joining the hunt, tracing the movement of crops and people across oceans through strands of DNA. The more we look, the clearer it becomes: the oceans were never empty. They were highways alive with ships exchanging more than just goods, ideas, stories, and innovations that shaped civilizations. This isn't just about rewriting history books. It's about reclaiming a lost chapter of human ingenuity, one where curiosity and courage propelled us beyond horizons we'd barely dreamed of. Imagine the Polynesian navigators who trusted star paths over sight of land, or the Bronze Age merchants who braved the open sea without compasses. Their legacy isn't just in the artifacts they left behind, but in the spirit they embodied: a refusal to see the unknown as unattainable. So what's next? The search continues, from robotic probes scanning the Mediterranean's depths to historians revisiting old texts with fresh eyes. Maybe the next breakthrough will come from a storm-exposed wreck, a newly translated inscription, or a child's question about why ancient myths sound so similar. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but not forever. And as the waves of discovery keep rolling in, one thing's certain: the story of our past is far richer, stranger, and more interconnected than we ever dared to believe. The voyage to uncover it, that's just getting started.